In today's digital world, our hard drives are filled with tons of files. Sometimes it can be very difficult to find those files. And then when we do find some files, we're not even sure if those are the right files to work on or not. From a workflow perspective, one of the most important concepts in design lately has been the use of metadata. Metadata is information that describes what a file is. The problem, though, has always been is that where do you store that metadata? You can now store metadata directly inside of each document. This metadata conforms to the XMP standard, or Extensible Metadata Platform. And while that all sounds very technical, the reality is that at the end of the day, you'll be able to find your files faster and, more importantly, be able to identify the author of files and whether or not that file has copyright status or other information as well. I'll just start here by creating a regular print document, and I'll click OK to take the settings that we've had before. And I'll go to the File menu. And then on the bottom of the File menu, there's something here called File Info. And this dialog box that appears allows me to specify settings for my Illustrator file. For example, I could specify a title of this particular file, an author title if I want to, and a description of this document. I could also say the person who actually defined that particular description and assign keywords to this document. What's great about this is that all this information, or this metadata, can be searched upon. In fact, the way that XMP works is that, and again, I don't want to get too technical here, but it's important to know this. When I have a regular Illustrator file, the XMP data is stored in an XML format in the header part of the file, which means that I don't necessarily have to open the file in order to find that information about that file. Certain databases, or even an application called Adobe Bridge, has the ability to go ahead and perform searches on that metadata. So for example, if my file name was hello, but my keywords I specified beach ball, if I did a search on beach ball, then that Illustrator file would come back in that particular search. I can also specify a copyright status. I can put the copyright notice here and a URL as well. And you'll also notice at the top of this dialog box I have different tabs. IPTC is a standard for how metadata is actually formed. It's what we call a schema. And again, there's a little slider here in the bottom where I can actually go through all these fields. You don't have to enter information in all these fields, but of course, the more information you do put in here, the more easily it will be found. And I can even step through some of these settings over here as well. There's one here called Illustrator. This basically determines or shows me which new document profile was used to create that document. Again, this is helpful for other ways that Illustrator files can be used. In the advanced section here, I can actually see some of these particular settings that are here as well. I'm actually going to go back for a minute over here, all the way to the beginning, and just click on one setting here called camera data. Now obviously in Illustrator files, there is no camera data because you're creating inside of an Illustrator file. However, when you snap a photograph with a digital camera, there's a lot of settings. For example, the shutter speed, the date and time that photograph was taken is all automatically added into your metadata. This is great because as a human being, I don't have to physically go in there and add that information. It's automatically added to the file. There are certain things that are automatically added to your metadata inside of an Illustrator document even without you doing anything. For example, if I use several Pantone colors, different typefaces inside of a particular file, as soon as I save my Illustrator file, that information, the inks that I've used and the typeface that I've used, are included in that metadata, which means that in theory it's possible for me to go to an application like Adobe Bridge, do a search for a typeface Helvetica, and then have all Illustrator files that use Helvetica come up in that search. So working with metadata is an incredible way to really make sure that you can find the documents in the right way. It's important if you are working with a lot of files, if you work in a big organization, or more importantly, if you work in an environment where you're sharing files constantly with a whole team of designers, the more metadata you add to a file in this file info panel, the easier it'll be to find that documents and work with those documents moving forward.